The need to do a detailed disassembly of the Japanese Type 99 rifle may be necessary for cleaning, repairs, replacement of parts, or inspection. It should be limited to necessary instances and be done in a clutter-free area. The tools required to complete a detailed disassembly include assorted screwdrivers, small punches with hammer, and a wrench. Throughout this assembly, ensure screwdriver blades fit in screw heads properly. Too small of a blade, or a blade that does not fully seat, may damage the screw head. You may find that screws on the Type 99 are secured by staking. Removing stake screws should be avoided unless necessary. Ensuring the rifle is unloaded and safe is the first step to any disassembly or maintenance. Detailed disassembly starts with regular disassembly or a field strip. Regular disassembly includes disassembly of the bolt, cleaning rod, follower, and spring. In order to detach the bolt, place the rifle in a horizontal position with the barrel facing up. While supporting the rifle with the left hand, grasp the bolt handle with the right hand. Place in an upright position and pull it completely backward. Then open the bolt catch to the left with the thumb and pull the bolt handle slowly backward to remove from the receiver. Care should be taken so that the butt is not damaged by the safety knob lug in doing this. The bolt is disassembled in the following order after the bolt cover is first removed. First, remove the safety knob. Hold the bolt with the left hand and place the palm of the right hand on the rear of the safety knob. Exert sufficient pressure on this and turn completely to the right. Then if pressure is released, the safety knob will become detached from the bolt housing. The firing pin can then be removed from the bolt housing. The firing pin spring is then removed from the firing pin. To remove the extractor, grasp the bolt housing with the left hand. After moving the position of the extractor to above the elliptical hole, press the extractor forward and detach, ensuring it does not spring off the bolt. In removing the cleaning rod, place the rifle in a vertical position with the barrel facing forward. With the left hand, grasp below the cleaning rod catch and press the catch with the thumb. Then lift out the cleaning rod. In removing the follower spring and the follower, pull the floor plate catch to the rear. After the floor plate opens, grasp it with the left hand. With the right hand, grasp the lower blade of the spring slightly above the bent portion. Lift upward slightly and pull backward. Then it will become detached from the floor plate. The follower and the follower spring are also disassembled in the same manner. After regular disassembly, a detailed disassembly can be conducted. This includes removal or disassembly of the front upper band and the upper band plate, lower band, handguard, barrel and receiver, rear sight, magazine, floor plate catch, cleaning rod catch, trigger mechanism, butt plate, butt sling swivel, and monopod. The order of the detailed disassembly is as follows. The front sight can be pounded out either from the left or right. Care must be exercised not to damage the front sight blade. When reassembled, it must be zeroed in again, the older marker line erased and replaced with a new marker line. Removal of the front sight and base is beyond the scope of this video. Care must be exercised in disassembly of the upper and lower bands. The bluing of the barrel must not be scraped off and the stock must not be damaged while doing so. To remove the upper band and the upper band plate, pull the monopod away from the upper band. Remove the left and right screws and the plate bolt. The upper band and upper band plate can then be slid forward. They cannot be removed from the barrel without removal of the front sight base. To remove the lower band, place the barrel facing left and unscrew the lower band screw. The lower band can then be slid forward and removed together with the monopod. They also cannot be removed from the barrel without removal of the front sight base. For removal of the handguard, the barrel is placed facing upward. Grasp the front end of the handguard and remove together with the metal frame by pulling slowly to the front while slightly lifting upward. During the disassembly of the handguard, care must be taken in order to not damage the metal frame and the rear end. The long and short receiver screws and the trigger guard screw are then to be removed. The trigger guard and floor plate can then be removed from the stock. With the rifle in a level position, grasp the stock and lift it off the barrel and receiver. When removing the stock, the front end and the rear end must be removed evenly from the barrel and receiver. Otherwise, the stock may be damaged. Next, detach the recoil plate. The barrel and the receiver are disassembled only when replacement of the barrel is necessary. This is beyond the scope of this video. In order to disassemble the rear sight, the rear axle pin is removed and the rear sight detached. The rear sight spring is disassembled from the base by removing the small rear sight spring screw and tipping it slightly forward. For disassembly of the slide, first remove the small rear sight screw. Then detach the slide from the rear sight by depressing the slide catches and sliding it up and off the rear sight. Next, unscrew the slide catch pin. Then detach the slide catch and slide catch spring from the slide. This is repeated for the other side. In the disassembly of the anti-aircraft lead sidearms, the anti-aircraft lead sidearm screw is unscrewed. The anti-aircraft lead sidearm can then be removed. This is repeated for the other side. The springs can also be detached by pushing them about 3 mm from the outside inward. In the disassembly of the rear sight base, the rear sight base screw is removed and the base pulled out to the fore. For disassembly of the bolt retainer and ejector, unscrew the bolt retainer pin. Then detach the bolt retainer from the receiver. The ejector can then be removed from the bolt retainer. The bolt retainer spring can be pushed out of the bolt retainer by pushing from the side of the bolt retainer that is secured with the pin. To disassemble the sear and the trigger, the sear pin is extracted. Then the sear and the trigger are detached from the receiver, and the sear spring removed. Next, the trigger pin is removed and the trigger detached from the sear. For disassembly of the magazine, it can simply be pulled from the trigger guard. To remove the floor plate, the front pin is extracted. The floor plate can then be removed from the trigger guard. The floor plate catch is disassembled by removing a small screw to the rear of the trigger guard. The floor plate catch can then be pulled out together with the spring and the spring removed. The cleaning rod catch is removed by pushing it inward from the outside. In such cases, the base and the spring of the cleaning rod catch disassembles together from the stock. The base, catch, and spring can then be disassembled. The butt plate is disassembled by unscrewing the wood screws. The butt plate sling swivel is disassembled by removing the wood screws. The monopod is disassembled from the lower band by removing the spring pin and nut, using a wrench to hold the nut. The spring is then detached. The monopod base pin is removed, then the monopod base is detached from the lower band, and the monopod from the monopod base. With the detailed disassembly, parts can be inspected, cleaned, and repaired or replaced as necessary. Assembly is the reverse order of disassembly. During assembly, the pins and screws must be inserted in the direction stipulated. Replace the monopod, monopod base, and monopod base pin if removed. Replace the monopod spring. It should sit flush with the lower band. The spring pin can then be inserted from the side opposite the sling swivel through the spring and lower band. The nut is then screwed onto the spring pin and tightened. Assemble the butt sling swivel. With the long rifle, the longer wood screw is screwed on the side that is closer to the front end and the shorter wood screw on the side that is closer to the rear end. Replace the butt plate. The longer wood screw is screwed in at the lower end, and the shorter wood screw in at the top. The cleaning rod base, catch, and spring are then reassembled. Ensure the catch compresses the spring and returns in the base. The cleaning rod catch is then replaced, rounded end to the front, by pushing it outward from inside the stock. Assemble the floor plate catch. The spring is inserted into the catch. The catch and spring are replaced on the trigger guard. Compress the spring and then secure the catch with the small screw. Ensure the floor plate catch moves freely and returns to the forward position. Assemble the floor plate and replace the front pin. When assembling the magazine, place the lower side toward the front and the angular side facing up. To assemble the sear and the trigger is aligned with the sear and the trigger pin replaced. Next, the sear spring is placed back on the guide on the sear, and the sear is aligned in the receiver. The sear pin is then replaced. Assemble the bolt retainer spring and ejector spring with the bolt retainer. the spring must be pushed up to fully seat in the bolt retainer. Insert the ejector in the slot of the bolt retainer, compressing the ejector spring, and then aligning the holes in the ejector and bolt retainer. When assembled properly, the ejector should curve away from the bolt retainer. Place the bolt retainer and ejector on the receiver, with the ejector going through its slot in the receiver, and align the holes. Insert the bolt retainer pin through the receiver, bolt retainer, and ejector. Screw in the bolt retainer pin. In order to reassemble the rear sight, if removed, replace the rear sight base and secure the rear sight base screw. If removed, the rear sight spring can then be replaced and secured with the rear sight spring screw, followed by the rear sight and secured with the rear axle pin. In order to reassemble the rear sight slide, press the anti-aircraft lead sight arm springs in from the inside outward if removed. Replace the anti-aircraft lead sight arms with the graduating markings toward the rear sight aperture. Secure the arms with the anti-aircraft lead sight arm screws. The screws should be inserted down toward the rear sight aperture. Pressure may need to be applied to the springs to align the holes. The left and right slide catches and springs can then be attached. Place these springs in the catch. Then hook the base of the catch on the slide. And secure by screwing in the slide catch pins. Ensure each catch moves and returns freely. The slide can then be slid onto the rear sight while depressing the slide catches. Finally, the small rear sight screw is replaced. Replace the recoil plate. Ensuring the holes in the recoil plate are aligned with the holes in the stock. To assemble the barrel and receiver with the stock, place the barrel and receiver in a level position with the trigger facing up. Replace the stock on the receiver. Ensuring the recoil plate does not fall out, the stock remains level with the receiver, and the trigger passes through its hole in the stock. To assemble the trigger guard, place it on the stock. Insert the trigger guard and receiver screws. The shortest screw is forwardmost, and the longest screw is rearmost. When the trigger guard and receiver screws are being screwed in, be sure they are turned evenly. Otherwise, the trigger guard may become tilted and cannot be properly tightened. Also, when the small screw is not tightened properly, it affects the accuracy of the rifle. When firing, the contact point between the stock and the receiver is often damaged when the barrel recoils. For replacement of the handguard, the barrel is placed facing upward. During assembly of the handguard, care must be taken in order to not damage the metal frame and the rear end. With the metal frame to the rear, place the handguard on top of the barrel. Slowly push the handguard to the rear, sliding the metal frame under the rear sight base. During the assembly of the upper and lower bands, the bluing of the barrel must not be scraped off and the stock must not be damaged. The lower band, with monopod at the bottom, can be slid rearward to stop. The lower band screw can then be inserted from the right side of the rifle and tightened. The upper band and upper band plate can then be slid onto the front of the stock and handguard. The right and left screws and the plate bolt can then be inserted and tightened. Secure the monopod onto the stock. Replace the cleaning rod, threaded end first, into the front of the stock. To assemble the magazine spring and follower, insert the narrow blade of the magazine spring into the follower. The lower blade of the magazine spring can then be slid into the floor plate. Insert the follower into the magazine well and press the floor plate against the rifle. Maintaining pressure on the floor plate, pull the floor plate catch to the rear until it latches. The bolt can then be assembled. In assembling the extractor, align the extractor collar ears with the elliptical hole of the bolt housing. Fit the hole in the bottom surface of the extractor. With the left hand, grasp the bolt body together with the spring portion of the extractor. Then press the extractor outward with the right thumb and push into place, which connects it with the extractor collar. After assembly, turn the extractor to the left and engage the projection behind the extractor hooks onto the groove of the extractor housing. Then place it accurately over the right locking lug of the bolt. Insert the firing pin spring into the firing pin. Insert the firing pin into the bolt housing. The sear lug must be fitted into the rear semicircle Otherwise, it is impossible to assemble the bolt. In fitting the safety knob, the lug in the middle of the axle is fitting into the narrow groove on the inside of the rear part of the firing pin. Then pressure is exerted. If it does not enter even after application of pressure, turn slightly to the left or right so that proper contact is made. After the safety knob enters, turn it completely to the left, then relieve the pressure. If the sear lug of the firing pin is fitted by mistake to the snail-shaped portion at the rear of the bolt housing, grasp the bolt housing with the left hand. Press the safety knob sufficiently with the right hand and turn the sear lug to the right along the snail-shaped part. After it stops, reapply pressure, and when the firing pin spring will not move further, the sear lug is fitted into the semicircular part. Then the safety knob is rotated to the left. It is now correctly assembled. The bolt cover can then be placed on the bolt by placing the bolt handle through the hole in the bolt cover. When the bolt is fitted into the receiver, the correctness of the bolt assembly is rechecked. The catches on both sides of the bolt cover are fitted into the grooves on the sides of the receiver. The bolt retainer is opened outward, the bolt pushed forward, magazine platform depressed downward, and bolt handle lowered, completing assembly. Then the trigger is pulled and the firing pin is left in the fire position. To function check the rifle, start by unlocking the bolt and drawing it fully to the rear. The bolt should not come out of the receiver. Press the bolt forward. The last round hole open on the follower should keep the bolt from going forward. Depress the rear of the follower and close the bolt, turning the bolt handle down. Place the rifle on safe and pull the trigger. The trigger should move to the rear, but the firing pin should not be released. Place the rifle on fire and pull the trigger. The firing pin should be released, making an audible click. The rifle should be left in the fire position for storage. This completes the function check. As mentioned, detailed disassembly should be limited to repairs and other necessary instances. The basic principle should be that it is not conducted in general. Thanks for watching. If you found this video interesting or helpful, go ahead and give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Then let us know what you thought or would like to see with a comment. If you'd like to support the channel, you can become a member on Patreon or YouTube or subscriber on Player. Links to these are in the description below. For more information on historical firearms, head on over to historyandfirearms.com.